So apparently on Sunday's game between the A's and the Seattle Mariners at the Coliseum, there was some big time action taking place. And it wasn't necessarily on the field. It was actually taking place in the stands. And among the very few fans that showed up to the game, there was one couple in particular that decided that they wanted to, take the opportunity to utilize the vast acreage of the Coliseum that had very few people to engage in some very fine action of their own. Apparently the game itself wasn't very thrilling or very riveting, so they resorted to actually perform their own action and really make it a memorable one. If anybody out there hasn't already heard the news, apparently there was a couple that was engaging in oral sex, basically, in the upper deck of the Oakland Coliseum. I think it was in the 300 section, 334 if I'm not mistaken, according to one of the articles that I read. And one of the things that just doesn't make any sense for me reading the article is that apparently no cameras within the facility were able to record the couple engaging in that type of activity. There was no security guards that even were able to see them up there all by themselves. If you look at the video, they are the only two people pretty much in an entire section sitting way up there doing their thing. And no security guard or concessions person was able to actually see what they were doing. And that's just inexcusable, in my opinion, that they wouldn't actually capture these two guys, right up there. I remember back in the early 2000s when I would go to A's games, and I would go on a consistent basis, the Coliseum was pretty much empty like it is nowadays. I mean, it's not as dramatically or drastically empty like it's been this season. This season has been historically bad, the attendance. But back in the early 2000s, the upper deck would be pretty much an empty space. You would see the lower deck, level field, and diamond vision, and the second deck pretty filled up. But when it came to the third deck, there was very few people actually sitting there. And I remember every time I would go to the game, I would always buy tickets to sit in the upper deck. As a matter of fact, on Wednesdays, the tickets would actually go for $1. They had those special, I don't know if you guys remember, but those that are A's fans, they had those special $2 bar tickets or $1 bar tickets for the third deck, for the upper deck. And so every time I would go to the A's game, I would buy a ticket at the in the third deck. Well, when I would walk into the Coliseum and I would walk up to the third deck, there was always a security guard telling me not to sit at the very edge of the third deck of the stadium because there was hardly anybody there. So even though my ticket read that seat would actually belong to me, the security guard would always tell me, "Hey guys, you're not allowed to sit over there. Why don't you move closer to the center of the third deck where the other people are sitting?" So even if you wanted to sit way up there, isolated by yourself, over by the corner of the third deck, you were not allowed to do that. And so I haven't been to the Coliseum, I must admit. I haven't been back to the Coliseum since 2003. So it's been almost 20 years since the last time I went there. And this is how it was all the time. The other thing that happened, and apparently it hasn't changed at all, it hasn't changed much. The other thing that occurred consistently when I would go to A's games is that you would see people up there, way up there at the very last row, smoking a joint, smoking marijuana, making out with their teenage girlfriend or boyfriend. So all of this illicit activity was already taking place at the Coliseum. So this is not news at all. I mean, this stuff happens all the time during Ace games up at the in the upper deck, and there isn't that many people, like I said, up there. So they take advantage of that and they engage in activity like you saw this couple engaging on on Saturday. But one of the things that I just don't understand is, how is it possible? I don't know, like I said, I haven't been there in 20 years. Do they even have any security guards up there monitoring fans that are sitting in the upper deck? Because that couple shouldn't have been sitting there in the first place to begin with. Before the game even began, they should have been sitting in the middle of the upper deck. And if you look at the video, they're sitting right on the corner. They're not even sitting in the middle of the upper deck. So I found that extremely, well, it just didn't make any sense to me and confusing to me, because that wasn't what happened back in the early 2000s. You would be immediately told to move to the center of the upper deck, and then the cameras didn't even catch what these guys were doing. That just another reason why the A's need a new ballpark, by the way. That's another reason why they need to move out of the Coliseum, in my opinion, and go somewhere else. I mean, that place is so outdated. So many things happen at the Coliseum. It's just hilarious at this point. You know, people having oral sex, the lights turning on and off, rodents and possums running wild, not just in the stands, but also in the booth, and the actual announcer's booth. All kinds of crap going on at the Coliseum. The sewer overflowing with human excrement in the dugouts. I mean, it's just remarkable what happens at the Coliseum. And for whatever reason, we always get a lot of attention, but it's always negative attention. We always get some negative publicity. And the article apparently says that if these guys are caught, basically if they are identified, they're going to be either fined up to $1,000, or they can be going to prison for 6 months. I don't think they'll go to prison, but they might pay a little bit of a fine for doing that. But they're getting a lot of exposure right now, that's for sure. But yeah, I just wanted to discuss this incident because I just found it hilarious, and it's another example of how the Coliseum has run its course. The Coliseum is just not taken seriously anymore. Apparently, even the employees there and the concession stands are not even doing their job by identifying these people and telling them to not sit where they're not supposed to be sitting. But anyway, just wanted to make a video about this, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.